Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland. In this episode, I'll be reviewing the long-awaited pedal set made by the guys at Feel VR, the Pedals 1. An all-metal pedal set with a load cell brake and contactless position sensors on the clutch and throttle pedals should make for a great set of pedals, especially considering the price that a lot of early funders got them at. Time to put them through the SRG's review process and see how they do. So, let's get to it. So now let's take a closer look at the Feel VR Pedals 1. Right, straight out of the box, they have actually kind of a nice look to it. It looks good under the light here with the aluminum heel plate and the stainless steel pedal faces, which really aren't stainless steel, I think. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But overall, it's got some nice accents. It's got these little plates here that you just pop right off. And that's so if you need to pull these assemblies through the front or do some maintenance or whatever. I suppose that's what these are for. And yeah, you can actually take them all off if you don't like that red look and make it all black. So you don't have to go with these. And they just snap on and off. They're kind of a spring steel, and the way that's bent in here just snaps right on and off. Very simple thing here. It's powder coated nicely, actually. You see that there? All right. So yeah, the accents are kind of nice with the red and the black, and then we have this aluminum heel plate. This has that diamond plate type of pattern to it. So yeah, and we turn it around here. The back of the pedals have red springs in them. And even the brake pedal has a preload spring in there that is red. And we have some more of these accents on the back. And we'll talk more about the pedals in a little bit. Right. The bottom plate that everything is attached to is a steel, looks like a stamped steel unit to me. And it's got the sticker here for Feel VR. I've been using this a little bit, so that's probably why it peeled off under the heat. And yeah, on the bottom here, we can see we've got some mounting points here that we can actually mount to the rig. And that's what I'm actually going to use to mount to my P1 chassis. And we'll see that when we get to it. And we have a plate here that is covering the electronics. Now, this steel plate itself is, let's see, what's the thickness on this puppy? You guys aren't going to be able to see that. How am I going to get on this so you can see it? Anyway, I guess you're going to have to trust me. It's, let's see, looks like a 2 mil. I think that I'm going to do the top part because I don't know if the bottom is the same. So let me grab it there. Looks about 2.28 mil. Let me try over here on this side. And that's 1.74 mil. There must be some burrs on here, on this edge down here, causing the extra reading because this one's pretty flat. Yeah. So that's 1 point, well, we'll just call it 2. So 2 millimeter bottom plate here, right? And these pedals are attached via 4 bolts each. Make sure I don't crush my wire there. So we have 4 bolts. Let me pull, well, that's not a good one because we've got this bar in the way of it, but I think we can see it on the brake pedal over here. So let's snap that back on. Pull this off. And right in here, there's a 4-bolt pattern. Oh, hell, you guys are going to see this. We got 2 back here. Got 1 over there, and 1 over here. And then up the front position up here, we have 1 right over here. And we've got another one back down in, oh, now I'm messing it up because my hand's in the way, but back down in there. So we got 4 5 mil, I believe. They might be 4 mil heads. I haven't tried them yet. That you can loosen these up and move them via the slots here, as you can notice the slots, sideways. So that's nice that you can actually adjust these in a lateral position without, having to disassemble things and just undo your bolts there. So I like that feature here. Now, you can also, because of the way this is made, you can also pull these off. And each pedal can be mounted on its own aluminum profile type of setup if you want to do it that way. So if you really want a nice sturdy mount for it, that's the way I would bolt these down. Because this 2 mil plate here is not the stiffest in the world, as you might imagine, even though there is a backer plate inside of this, what we'll see in a little while. Each one of these pedals has its own backer plate with nuts on it so that we can adjust them and slide them back and forth. And the backer plate is also pinching this plate with the top of the base of the pedal here. So it's kind of sandwiching this plate in between it, right? But again, we'll talk about that as we get to it. All right, so what are the features of this we want to talk about? We have the clutch over here that has kind of a swing arm mechanism on it. You can see it move. See how it bends up at the very last of the stroke there? And that's to simulate actually pushing through the pressure plate springs on a real clutch. And it does feel like you're kind of doing that. So that's great that, you know, these pedals are supposed to come in at $300 retail from what I can tell from their website. Now, I know the first batch of these went out at $200 plus shipping, and maybe there was some $250 ones in there. But yeah, they're always showing it as $300 with a slash through it, or $299 with a slash through it. So I'm assuming that's the price point they're aiming for once all the initial early bird specials and those things are done from over at Kickstarter and over at Indiegogo. So anyway, we'll see how that all hashes out later. Right, so what else do we want to talk about here? I guess that's about it as far as aesthetics. Oh, here's something, a nice feature that was unexpected. And that is the potentiometers over here on the side are not really potentiometers. They're actually small magnets on the shaft here as you push this back and forth. And it has a Hall effects type sensor circuit board inside of this. And we'll see a closer look at that once we get to our look inside segment. So that's unexpected that they went, you know, at this cost and this price point that they have those in there. So that's definitely a plus for that. Anything else I want to talk about? Load cell on the brake, up to 50 kilograms as far as pressure available on your foot. So I'm not sure if this is like a 60 or something. One thing you can tell about this brake pedal, you can see how the cutout is right here. See how they've cut all these slots in around it? And we have the load cell actually right there, that square piece there. So when we press down on this pedal, this piece here can actually bend enough for this load cell to pick up that bend and relay the signal to the load cell circuit and amplifier circuit rather on the board that's under here. So yeah, load cell brake, right? We have some bumpers in here, right? And I will obviously pull this apart and we'll check the durometer of the bumpers and see how that assembly looks. I looked on their site and I didn't see anything as far as an upgraded or harder bumper, softer bumper, extras that you could get, but that might come later on, I don't know. Now there's also a calibration software app for this that you can download from FieldVR's website, which is basically, it's kind of, you know, instead of having to do it in DI view, you can do it on that app and save it. And it doesn't look like to me that you can save multiple configurations. It's a pretty basic thing, but it does calibrate these pedals rather quickly. And I kind of like that. We have rod ends up here on each pedal, which is nice because it gives that flex that it needs so they don't bind up when we're actually using the pedal. It has some nice slots cut into the side here for some aesthetics. Now, curious enough, it is you know, so many pedals these days are built this way with the two sides and then the bars connecting, or you'll have a bar in there connecting the two sides together to form the actual lever. And we first originally saw this well, we didn't see it really. Husingveld pedals were the first pedals that in the sim racing world that we were seeing that. But obviously that's not, Husingveld didn't invent that design. You know, it's been around for a long, long time. It's factually, you know, as far as putting two pieces of metal together with the spacer rods and bolting them together. Right. But a lot of pedals are following suit now because it's really an economical way to make a pedal, I think. But the only thing is, you don't see very many reinforcements here, right? It's pretty wide open here. We have one here, and we've got the one here that's actually also an adjustment for this, and then we have the one down there. And yeah, that's it. Then we have the pin down here that's actually the pivot point for the pedal down here, right? And it looks like oh, you can't see it because of that. It looks like it's kind of, we'll see it on this side. Looks like kind of a press in. I don't see any bushings in here. It looks like it's just a pin. Let me get a little closer here. I have to be careful with these pedals because they're sharp. I don't mean to look sharp. You see that pin right there? It looks like it's a pressed in unit there. There's no bushings or anything. So yeah, we'll talk about that later on too, because there's actually a segment that you can watch in this video called, I forget if it was Squeaks and Flex or Flex and Squeaks. So anyway, I got a segment on that about how these pedals actually performed. Right. Let's see, the accelerator. Well, it's the accelerator. Okay, it's the typical design we'll see on these kind of pedals. The spring in here is, and we got a spring that we can preload the spring if we want to. And yeah, just nothing special here. And we have another one of those Hall effects or contactless sensors right in there to check the position of the pedal. It has a very long throw capability from it. It came, I think, in the third or the fourth position, and I've actually gotten the second from the front now. And it's even there is a pretty long throw. In fact, I was thinking about I was going to end up moving it up one. I think that's probably where I would end up with it. if I was going to make this my pedal set that I used every day. All right, so overall quality is, well, it's good, but, you know, it's rough. It's got some rough edges on it. And I mean literally rough edges. A lot of this stuff seems to be stamped out steel. I'm not sure what parts are or aren't, but these pedal backs here, you know, when you do a stamp, you stamp steel, usually the top piece that gets pushed on, and in other words, that's the front. When they cut it, the stamp came down and went cut it like that. Or if they may have used a water jet or something, but they've left a pretty sharp burr on the back of these pedal faces. And you need to be careful with that when you're doing adjustment stuff. If you slip and you come up against that, you can cut yourself. I imagine. And just to demonstrate that, how are you going to demonstrate that, Barry? I have actually a piece of floss. See, got some floss here. And this is that nylon floss, right, that they put wax on or something. It's not the rope type. So it's pretty tough stuff. It'll cut your fingers, I think, before you can actually snap it. But anyway, just as a demonstration, just to make you mindful of how sharp these edges are back here, I'm just going to kind of rub it against the top here. Let me turn this around so I can get a better look at it. I'm just going to kind of rub it across the top with a little tension on it, and bing, slices it right pretty nicely, actually. So, again, it does have some rough spots on it. You know, it definitely doesn't have the polished, finished look of some of the other pedals available. But then again, we have to manage our expectations here on a pedal set that's coming in originally. Guys are getting these for $200 plus shipping. And then other guys are going to be getting them for like $250 plus shipping. And then eventually you'll be able to buy them for $300. But yeah, once they get to $300 though, then they're getting close to other competition out there that is certainly has a more professional and better finished overall than this pedal set does. But so far, you know, so good. You can't really complain too much if you're thinking about a $200 pedal set. But again, I think most people, once this becomes mainstream, if their website stays the way it is and indicates what they're going to do, it'll be a $300 pedal set plus shipping. But anything else we want to talk about? I guess that's about it. These faces adjust up and down, but we'll talk about that in the adjustments part. And of course, with the different holes here, we can move the faces back and forth. But chances are you won't need to do that, because we can, as you saw before, we can move these laterally, each individually, or just take them off and mount them straight to some profile, which again would be the better way to mount these. But if you did that, then we'd create other issues, because the electronics board is mounted to this bottom plate here, and you have to find another way to attach that and facilitate the electronic conversion board they have in here, which we will see on the look inside. Got some little pieces here for the floor. I got two here, and then we got these rubber pieces here that, you know, just the usual kind of rubber feet that we see, the stick-on deals. They're kind of soft. I kind of like them, actually. But again, typically I'll end up, after sliding them across the floor, these things start peeling off pretty quick. And I imagine this is going to be no different. And I'll be mounting mine, like I said, with these mounting points here, which is actually a pretty good mounting point, because it comes all the way through to the top. I'll show you this part over here. Again, being very careful with these pedals, because they will bite you. And yeah, so you've got a bolt here, and you've got one here, and you've got this little spacer, if you will, that's threaded that we can actually get a bolt up underneath. And that's how I'm going to attach these. Right, because I want to simulate as much as I can somebody who's, you know, is just going to throw them on the rig and not go to all the trouble to try to build something else to mount them to. Anything else? I guess that's about it. We got a USB cable, very long one, by the way. It's about not 3, but 2 meters. I believe I measured it out. And yeah, so plenty there. No ferrite sinks, but hey, again, we have to manage our expectations here, but it gets the job done, I'm sure. And one more thing, this pedal set is rather heavy. You might think be pretty substantial, rather, because it's all metal, right? There's no plastic here except for the covers on these sensors over here. So kudos for that. It's all steel. And it comes in at, what was that? It's 13 pounds, 14.5 ounces, or for everybody else in the world, 6.3 kilos. So yeah, pretty weighty, and that's good. You know, if you set them down on the floor on your carpet under your desk, then they probably wouldn't move too much, depending on how you press them. Again, I don't think I would want to race these in socks, because especially with this thing sticking out here, this screw. But you know, using shoes would be the best way, because again, this is all steel, and it's kind of heavy, and it's not the easiest thing to move, even with light tensions on it. So it's not going to be like a Logitech or the entry-level type Thrustmaster pedals in the feel. They definitely feel pretty substantial when you're pressing on them with your feet. Anything else? I guess that's about it. Yeah, I think what we'll do now is just go ahead and get into the adjustments on the pedals, or a look inside. I can't decide which one I'm going to do first, but yeah, we'll get to the next segment. So let's go ahead and go over some of the adjustments available to the pedal, or to the user by the pedals. First, the heel plate itself, you can adjust this back and forth, and that will actually just change the relationship to this lip here to the front of the frames of these pedals, these steel stamp parts that are the frame. So I'm going to leave that alone. There's really no reason to do that, but you will be able to adjust it with, these are 2.5 flat heads on the top here, and we have on the bottom 2.5 button heads that we would adjust. When we loosen them up, then you can slide the whole thing back and forth through these slots here, and yeah, easy enough to do there. That's a pretty easy adjustment to make. These have no impact on the adjustability as far as this top plate moves. And to make your adjustments, they do include some tools and an envelope. We have a 4, a 3, and a 2.5 millimeter wrench, one of each. They also give us this little stamped wrench here. This is a 13 mil, and over here we have a 8 mil. Okay, and that's for these bolts, obviously, we're going to have to adjust in here. Typically on these, though, you're going to need two of these hexes to actually make the adjustments. And one thing I want to advise everyone on these pedals, at least on my set of pedals, is these stamped units, typically they'll have a smoother side on the front where the actual die went in and stamped the steel out, and then because it's pushing the metal as it's cutting it, it leaves a burr on the back, all right, which is sharp. And on these, it is sharp. You got to be careful when you're making adjustments on these. So anytime you're trying to grab something and move it up and down, like this rod, if I was adjusting this part right here, I want to make sure that you check how sharp it is around there and make sure you don't, it's easy to slide off and cut yourself. So just be careful of that. I'd like to see that, as far as quality control, when they take these out to, smooth all these edges off, because it's really sharp on the back of these pedal faces especially. And yeah, inside of this, some of these levers, it's pretty sharp too. Yes, again, it's just one of those quality control things that I'm sure they'll get squared away sooner or later, but just be careful when you're doing these adjustments, because it can cause you some issues. Right. And also, they do give you some paperwork with your pedal set, and it's got the usual, it's got a signature card here, all the guys that were involved in the project. And yeah, it just says, "Hey buddy," down there, "Welcome to Field VR," in basically their corporate statement. And you also get, that's the envelope everything came in, and you also get these assembly instructions, if you will. They're not really, there's no adjustment instructions on this. Let's see if I can get that where you can see it. There we go. And yeah, it's just a basic assembly and parts that should be in there, and your tools and so forth and so on. There is a wall mount bracket. Let's see if I can get to that in there. You can see that right in here. So you can actually mount these pedals to a wall. So there's the brackets right there, and it shows them coming out of the box. And yeah, how you should assemble them on the bottom part here, right? Now that's an accessory apparently, and it actually states that in here. A wall mount is not included. Please consider getting it through our online store, right? So that looks like an accessory. It did not come with this pedal set, and I don't think anyone's getting them with these pedal sets. We also got a couple of decals, and it looks like, to me, the decals that are on there, if you ever saw a picture of their VR steering wheel, this is what looks like the horn button sticker in the center of that wheel. Anyway, so you get some stickers. Right, so let's go ahead and get on with the adjustments. On the pedals themselves, this is where we're going to make, the pedal comfortable to us and how we want it to feel. And what I have here is, first thing, before we make any adjustments, usually you want to relieve the preload, if there is any, on this. And I've already loosened this up a little bit. It's got a locking nut here, and then we have the actual adjustment nut here that will push down for more preload, and you loosen it to get less. Typical of these type of brake pedal sets, it's the same design, a rod going through with some threads on it, so we can adjust the spring. Right, so I'm like taking all the pressure off of this before I make any adjustments, right? So make sure this is kind of flopping around. So there's no pressure on this. Again, I'm mindful of these sharp edges here as I'm making the adjustments. We have some 3 millimeter button head on each side of this actual lever here, right? And I've already got them loose because I was playing with it at first just to see how well it moved up and down. And if you look at the slot here, all right, so the slot has a smooth part on the back of it, and it also has a indentation on the front part here, right? So the theory is you push this back a little bit, it should clear these indentations and then let you raise it or lower it. Now, if we lower this, this would become easier to press this throttle pedal. And if we raise it, it's going to become harder because of the lever principle. As we lower it, we're actually increasing the length of this lever that we're pushing on when it's related to this rod end that's in here. And yeah, all these have rod ends so they don't bind up. Again, very nice to see that. And yeah, so once we loosen both of these, and remember, you only get one of these wrenches, so you're going to have to source another 3mm wrench to be able to loosen both at once because they kind of lock down together. But once they are loose and you loosen your preload, it should be just a matter of taking some pressure off the front of this plate and be able to move it up and down. Now, to do this, I'm not going to do it from this angle. I'm going to slide this puppy around and get behind it, all right? And I'm kind of get both hands underneath it and see if I can't make it go up and down. I might have to just use one hand. And again, mindful of the sharp edges here. You don't want to get too close to this because it could move quickly on you and you lose your, just in other words, be careful. So once you have that loose, I've got them loose. I'm pulling apart this way, trying to get them to relieve the pressure so I can get the thing to move up or down. And it's not the easiest thing to do. I'll tell you that right away. You got to kind of, let me make sure I've got this one loose enough though, because I was playing with it. I want to make sure this one's loose. This should be loose enough, yeah. Okay, I don't want to take it all. You don't want to take these screws all the way out, by the way. If you do, then this spacer that's in here that's going through this rod end, in the middle of that rod end, gets cantered, and it's just just don't do it, because if you do, it's going to make your life a little more miserable, because you've got to get it lined back up and get your screws back in. So yeah, don't do that. Okay, so now that must have had a little bit more tension on it, but now you can see I can actually raise this up and down. All right, so if I'm raising it up or down, again, just like I said before, if I want more pressure, make it harder to push, I'll put it up there, and if I want less pressure, I'll go ahead and move it all the way down to the bottom, if I can get it to go. Again, very carefully, I'm mindful of all these edges here. Yeah, I think it should go all the way down, but there it goes. So all the way down in this position, we've increased our lever to the maximum, and it's going to be very, very easy to push your throttle pedal. Of course, I don't have any preload on it yet. So again, you need to adjust this to your own personal preference. See if I can get the slide back up again. Again, you got to kind of wiggle this thing around. There we go. See how it kind of snaps loose though, and that's why I'm telling you, be mindful of these sharp edges around here. So I'm just going to leave it kind of in the middle, and then you'll come back with your 3mm wrench, snug one up, and then go ahead and get the other one snugged up. You might be able to use one wrench on this. I used two to take it apart, so I'm going to go ahead and snug this down and see what happens. Looks like that one tightens all the way in without this one moving. So yeah, this might be easier than I thought it would, because usually it's a solid rod going through there with threads all the way through, and one will spin before. If you just try to do one side, it won't come out because it's spinning on the other side. But yeah, all right. So I was able to get one to tighten it back up. And then once we're done with that, we'll just simply run our 13mm back down to the pressure we want on our spring. And the spring, yeah, you can kind of push the spring back and make it easier. So you can spin it down like that, and then I'll have my pressure on it there. And it's hard to tell by hand what pressure you're going to want on this, but yeah, that feels pretty good to me. So then I'll just come in with their 13mm wrench, or your own 13mm wrench, and snug that down on top. Okay, that made this one come loose. So we're going to need two 13mm to properly adjust this, because you're going to have to hold one while you're doing the other one, it looks like. Yeah, that's probably snug enough right there anyway, though. Okay, so there it is. Now, one thing I did notice here is it's pretty smooth. It's got some oil. It has oil on all of these. But one thing I noticed here is this rod here. I was looking at it. Let me see what that is. Let me just try to wipe it down a little bit. There. It looks like it's got just a little bit of surface rust on this rod here. Yeah. So we got a little bit of surface rust on that there. Not sure why, because it was lubed. Unless, in the manufacturing plant, wherever they're manufacturing these, that sat it around a little bit and got some rust on it from banging up against some other rods. No big deal. You can just wipe it down, and I'll put some more light oil on that. Yeah, done deal. It's not going to affect the performance. It's just like a little bit of surface on it, but yeah, it's just something. Again, I like to point these things out if I find them. Now the stop, this is a long throw on this pedal, and that's way too long for what I want in a throttle pedal. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take this wrench. I believe it'll fit the stop There we go. And actually it's an 8 mil, so I'm gonna actually use my own wrench. It's a little easier just to do it that way. And we have a 4 mil socket head cap on this side. All right, down in there. Easy enough. I mean, once you have it in hand, you can see it right away. So I'm just gonna put this in there, hold it while I take this wrench and loosen it up. So we get her loose, and again, we should be able to, these actually, looks like it might have to come all the way out, and I'll show you why. It doesn't have the slot like we have up here in the accelerator pedal, that smooth back piece. These are just regular holes that looks just drilled in series. See that? So yeah, we're gonna have to actually pull this out to adjust that throw. No big deal once you're to this point. I mean, like I said, we're already have our wrenches and everything, so I'll just go ahead and take this back out. And I gotta loosen this nut to where the nylon safety lock part doesn't engage anymore. So it's got one of those nylon nuts in there. See that blue nylon? So once you disengage from the screws or the threads on that nylon, you can take it off by your fingers. We got a little washer in here. If I can get it off. There we go. See your little washer? Don't want to lose those. And then so yeah, there's no way to move this without taking it out. So I'm going to slide this all the way out. Try to angle this, maybe you guys can see it. No big deal, really. It's pretty easy. Slide it all the way out, and there we have the bolt. And you can see it's the smooth shank for strength, and then they cut the threads at the other end that you're going to need. We got another little washer there too, and again, a 4 mil socket head cap. Now, let me go ahead and, again, sharp edges down here. Be careful what you're doing. And we're just going to kind of slide this. I'm actually going to slide this out. Let's take a quick look at it. Looks like we have some kind of a sleeve in here and a hard rubber outer. You know, it almost looks like a fuel line or something. See that little shiny part in there, like a weave, a reinforcement weave? You know, it almost looks like it could be sort of some kind of fuel line for the dampening part. It's going to make it nice and quiet, though. I like that. It's going to be very quiet when we use it. Now I'm going to go ahead and slide this back in carefully again with these edges. Hope I don't get cut. All right. It's not that bad. It's just, you know, once you cut yourself on sharp edges, you kind of shy on it for a while. And this kind of slides back and forth. And what you'll do is you'll get down the side here and look sideways at it and see where you want it. Now I'm just going to move the pedal and see if that's where I want it to be. It's hitting it right there. Actually, that's about right, I guess. So I'm going into the second from the front notch in here. So hopefully it's lined up on the other side pretty good. So I'm going to actually put my bolt back in to the hole. Yep, lined up pretty good there. And we got to come down a little bit here. Again, I'm kind of looking down this side here. There we go. There we go. So now we're through. So then it's a matter of taking our nut and our washer and put it back on. Now that I have that in there, I can really test it now. And you know what? That's still kind of longish. And yeah, it's all personal preference at this point. I'm actually, while I have it off, I'm going to actually change that. It's still a bit long, I think, for my driving style. So I'm going to go ahead and push it all the way up to the front. Again, look down the side here and get your hole lined up the best you can. And I don't, there we go. There we go. Again, it kind of moved when I moved the other side to line it up. It's just one of those things, you kind of work with it until you get it through. It's just, yeah, there we go. Done deal. Now, so my throw starts here. That's still a pretty decent amount of throw for me. So, yeah. Of course, I won't know for sure until I get it on there, but just that notch that was behind that second notch, just felt a little bit much for me. And again, personal preference. You guys use whatever you want to. Don't listen to me because everybody's different. So there we go. Tighten it down. Of course, it's a little easier to do when you have these kind of tools to work with. You know, just snug it down. You don't need a lot, I'm sure, on that to get it to where you want it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's going to be right. And I can't, and remember, I'm going to have to relube this rod before I actually mount these pedals, and I will do that. And I am keeping my paper towel handy because, as you can see, I'm getting a little dirt on my fingers working with these with these pieces and these bolts and nuts, which is not uncommon. I mean, it's something to be expected, so no big deal there. Right, so this adjustment, this is the next one, and this is going to adjust. We can see the same kind of setup that we have up here, so I'm not actually going to do it. But this is the same kind of setup. In other words, we have to take this bolt all the way out to make the change. And this is the pivot of the actual pedal lever assembly here. So that's going to adjust our rake on this pedal. And you can see it's one hole from the rear. All right, so if I move this further to the rear one hole, it's actually going to make this throttle pedal come up closer to me, right? Which I don't want at this point, because I'm going to be doing some heel and toe. So when I press on the brake, I'm going to want to reach over and be able to hit the throttle, right? So if anything, I may actually have to move that back a little bit, but we'll just have to wait and see how I can do that. Or I can go and do, remember, all three of these pedals are the same as far as the way these adjustments are working. I could go over to the brake and adjust that back a little more, which I may do by taking that one out. Again, this is one of those things you have to wait till you have it set up to figure out what you want to do, right? It's just, you know, like I said, you really can't tell until you have it mounted and you're pressing on pedals with your feet and you're seeing how everything's lining up with your feet, right? So I'm going to leave this for now back like that. I could go back a little bit further if I need to match my brake for heel and toe. Again, we're just going to have to wait and see. But again, the exact same thing going on here that we just showed you up here on the top for the actual stop for the throttle pedal itself. I'm much happier with that, I think, than when it was originally back there. It was all the way back to the third one. That was a lot of throw there. All right, so one more adjustment we can make here on the pedals themselves, and that's going to be the lateral adjustment. And I've taken all these beauty pieces off to show you the actual bolts that are in here that are going to control all that. All right, so it's still not easy to see them because they're kind of tucked in the back. Easy to see the ones back here, and you can actually orient where they are by where the slots are, right? So if I got a slot over here, then I know my bolt should be right there. So then I can look down right in by this rod end here. And again, be careful on these pedals. I just scraped myself there. The rod end down here is right on the back part of it, down straight. And again, I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see down inside of here to see that. But that's a 4mm cap head screw. All right. And the cool thing is we can actually adjust them without having to take any covers off or anything and get into the nut underneath. But there is a bit of a reach issue. Let me get my 4mm here. And you have to get down. I'll just use this pedal as an example because it's closer. So you have to get down in between. As a matter of fact, I've actually just made my life a little harder when I adjusted the stop here for this throttle. I'm glad it actually happened. So now it's going to be even more difficult for me to get. In fact, pretty much impossible for me to get to the hex head bolts right here underneath that stop now. So what I'll need to do is, if I would have known that going into this, then I would have obviously adjusted where I wanted the pedal as far as laterally located compared to next to my brake pedal, then make the adjustment from my stop. All right, so that's good that this happened. I like it when things like that happen in the video that you guys can see this. So if you do need to make adjustment and you're going to have your stop right on top of the bolts themselves, and that goes with any one of these pedals, the brake pedal, the clutch over here, wherever your stop is, you want to get these things laterally adjusted before you put your stop in, apparently. So we won't use the accelerator pedal, for example. We'll just go over here to the clutch pedal and take a look at that one. All right, so again, we've got some 4mm down in there, and again, we can tell where they're going to be by our grooves, right, where our location of these slots are that they're going to be moving back and forth in. And first off, these are probably, I think I may have done one of the, yeah, I've actually done this one before, so it's not that hard. But they're pretty cinched down pretty tight from the factory, and getting into this one and using a driver like this with the handle on it is not going to be easy to do. In fact, I'll just go over here and grab this one, or this one, because I haven't moved it yet. It really, and it's hard on your wrist when you're trying to twist hard like that. So what I usually do is get some real tools out. And here we have a long 4mm hex with a socket drive, obviously, and an extension, and that'll allow me to actually get down in there between, let me spin this around, down in here between this brake and this rod end, and be able to get some purchase on this thing to actually loosen it up. Hear that snap? And then I can loosen it up a little bit. So you might want to, when you first get them, I don't think you're going to need them that tight, because remember, when you're racing and driving, you don't need that much lateral support. I mean, obviously you need some, but yeah, you don't need that much. And I would, yeah, this one came loose pretty easy. But again, when you first get your set, if you're going to be adjusting them, here we go. So you might want to do that right away. Pull the beauty covers off and go ahead and get them. This one's still a little tight over here. It felt a little tight when I was doing it. There we go. So once you have them loose, get all your wrenches out. Now you can see, very simple to move these back and forth, right? In fact, if I needed to, if this wasn't off angle too much, which I think it's going to be, I need to still move this over this way. I could actually move this brake pedal over and get it pretty close for my heel and toe right there, right? So that's pretty close. Yeah, that's very close, and that's probably all I would need. But I think with the way this, I'll be sitting in my cockpit, I'm still going to want this to be over here a little bit and then bring this guy over. So it's more of a, you know, I'm not so stretched out coming over to the accelerator. But again, this is all subjective, and I'm just considering what I'm going to have to do to make this work. But nice that once we have it adjusted, then you can come in with your wrench and tighten things down, because you're not going to need factory tightness on these things to keep them from moving in the lateral direction, because you're not pushing that way, are we? We're pushing back and forth. So we'll go ahead and snug this back up. And that should never move, I would imagine. Yeah. Yeah, there's no way that's going to move laterally, just by tightening up at this. But again, you might have to get the power out to save your wrist when you're first initially doing it. All right, so one more adjustment here. Let's talk about the brake pedal. And first off, you can see there's a spring back here, and there is no adjustment for that spring. It's just a spring sitting in there. You don't get any extra springs in your kit to adjust, maybe go to a stronger spring or a weaker spring, where the case may be. And it's that nothing really happens on the brake pedal while this is moving, because there's not enough pressure on this back plate for the load cell to pick up, right? So yeah, there's no adjustment or preload on that. Now, I would like to see, but then again, you know, $200, $200, or even $300, and you buy these for $300. Yeah, I wouldn't expect to see too much as far as the adjustment, different things that you can use for adjustment. Maybe even put another bumper in there, or maybe a hard piece of something so it didn't move at all, and all you had was stiff pressure on it. But again, like I said, at the price point, I wouldn't expect too much of that kind of feature set. Now, we also have the adjustment of how hard this bumper is. There is actually, and when we look inside, we'll pull that apart and take a quick look at it. There's actually a urethane bumper. You're not going to be able to see it, but it's right inside of this tube here. I'm not sure how long it is, but yeah, it's in there. And what you'll do is you'll take your 13mm wrench to adjust that, once I engage it, how hard it is to press it, right, against that bumper. So we can actually preload that by loosening this 13mm lock nut here. See if I can get that to come off. There it goes. So once that's loose, then I can actually come in and I can start. You see how loose? It's not very tight now, because I can actually tighten this down with my fingers. So you can actually tighten this down and increase, as we're doing that, you're increasing. Let's see what we're doing here. It looks like the whole thing is moving. I'm pushing this whole cylinder down against this spring, all right? So I'm actually pre-compressing the spring now. So let's see how that feels. Yeah, there you go. There's the adjustment for that back spring. It's up here. So the bumper is not really changing that much, it feels like. And I don't know, it almost feels like there might be a spring inside of here. I can't say for sure until I get it apart, but because of the way that bumper is moving so easily, it makes me feel, or makes me think rather, that yeah, that might be a bumper sitting on top of a spring in here. But this is the preload adjustment for the spring apparently, and it's got to be putting some more pressure on this bumper, I would think, just by doing that. So you can get rid of a lot of that so, you know, it's not much now. It's in fact, maybe a little bit more for my liking. But again, everybody's going to be different, and being able to turn it with your finger sure is a lot quicker than doing it like this. Although this is not bad either. So, yeah. That's about, you know, maybe that's a little bit too tight. Again, subjective here. Depends on what you want. And I don't have it underfoot yet, so I'm just going to loosen it up a couple of turns there and just leave it like that. Straighten my rod end back up, and then I'll go ahead and run that lock nut back down, snug it up a little bit. You know, I put too much pressure to keep it from moving, and then I'll rotate my rod end back so it's clear. And there we have it. there's our brake adjustments with, of course, the caveat of all the other adjustments for angle and so forth, and being able to further adjust the pressure by adjusting the rod height inside of this, right? So that feels about right for me, I think. But again, we won't know until we get on there. Now, also, this is a thin plate here. So when I have it mounted, we're probably going to see some flex, I would imagine, in the plate itself. But again, $200 plus shipping for the first batch, $249 or even $300. Yeah, I'm not too surprised. I'm kind of, expectations are being met here. Right, so anything else? Yeah, I guess that's about it. Well, the face plates, we can do those, and they are 3 millimeters. And I did want to point out here, well, you're going to see this, but the flathead screw is a little proud on the bottom here of this pedal plate. See how it's kind of sticking out sideways there? We can see that. And that is, keep my cord from getting pinched there. That's really, I don't think it's a real bad issue, because it's just, you know, it's not a real sharp piece right here on this flathead part. But when you're pushing on this brake pedal, your foot or your shoe is going to be dragging across that. So I don't know how much of a bite that'll put in a sole of a shoe, but I've got it tightened down pretty good, and it just won't sit flush. And you don't want to tighten up too much, then I end up stripping it out. And anyway, just something that I saw actually a video, somebody had a set of pedals and they were doing a review on it, and they had the exact same thing. So I'm thinking that this is something that needs to be addressed in the manufacturing process. It almost is like the hole that is drilled into the plate behind this where the screw goes in needs to be at a little bit more of an angle this way so it'll sit flush. Anyway, so let's go ahead and see what the adjustment is. 3 mil flathead screws, easy enough. Just loosen them up. Actually, I did have that one pretty tight trying to get it to seat down. And I'll go ahead and get the top one. There we go. See, it fell right down. So there's two things we can do here. We can pull these screws all the way out, and I can move the pad this way. I can actually move it up one, so we'll have an empty hole up here if the adjustments that I have already aren't enough for me. But that's pretty good length of adjustment. Look at that. That's pretty good travel there as far as your height adjustments. I think that should probably satisfy most people. But yeah, it seems to me that if we had a different angle on this plate back here, this screw would sit flatter. In fact, I can actually look back there and see that. Yeah, okay. So anyway, height adjustment, and of course we want to go sideways, so we just change our holes. Pretty easy stuff. Find out the height you want, and just snug them up, and then tighten them down securely once you're finished with your snug. And I'll do the bottom one first. And again, you don't want to do it too much. It doesn't take much, I think, to hold these pedal faces on tightly. And there we go. Good to go. Right. So there we have it. That's how we adjust our pedal set. So I wanted to show you guys a look inside of this brake cylinder and how it's working as far as the durometers of the bumpers that are in here. And easy enough to take this off if we wanted to change that. We got a couple of screws here, these button heads that were on either side of the rod end up here. And just like we saw when I was adjusting the throttle throw resistance on this, same deal, just take these loose. But I had to take them all the way out, obviously, to remove this. And I'll go ahead and pull this out. And everything's nice and loose, as you might imagine. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull the whole thing out like that. Back it out between the frame of the pedal. And there we have it. And we've got our little preload spring there. And again, I don't know if they'll ever offer a different preload spring back there, but they might. You never know. And we've got a little stack in here. Now this is a little chrome steel sleeve here, and it's got a little grommet or guide, if you will, on the back there to obviously for the shaft here to travel through. So put that to the side, and here we have our stack. So we have a yellow one, an orange, and a couple of reds. All right, so let's see how they're made or what they're made of as far as durometer rating. All right. Now remember, when you put this back together, make sure you always put your washers in between your bumpers. Right, so let's check out the yellow one first. A little bit of oil on these, which is a good thing. You do want some oil on them so they don't bind up inside of our tube here. So let's go ahead and check this out. I'm not sure how well you guys are going to see this, but I promise I won't lie to you. So what we have here is, I'll get another shot here. All right, so that's about 65. And when I was doing the adjustments and we were doing the adjustment brake pedal, I said it felt like there was a spring in there. Well, at 65, this is pretty gummy. So that was probably what I was feeling in the springy part. That I thought there might be another little spring in there. But yeah, 65 on this. And the orange one, obviously is going to be stiffer. Sure feels that way anyway. And that comes in about 75. All right, so 75 there. Now we'll go for the red ones. And we've got 85 on the red. Let's try this red. And that's a little less, actually, it looks like. Whoop, I slipped off. Get back on there. Yeah, this one's more like 83, 82. All right, so a little bit of difference on these. Not that much that I think to matter. They're probably rated at 85 or something like that. 84 maybe. So, I don't know if in the future, if FeelVR will be offering an upgrade or some kind of accessory kit to where we can actually change these out for stiffer ones or softer ones and so forth. But it'd be nice to see that, I think. It would add some usability to their brake pedal. Of course, we don't know what their brake pedal feels like yet right out of the box, but we're going to find out. So yeah, all we got to do now is put this back together, and then you can see this is how we're adjusting the preload or the durometer load on these bumpers. All right, and easy, again, easy enough to do this. You can do it with your fingers to get the load, I think, that you could probably be comfortable with. But again, that's all subjective. So then once you're done with all this, we're just going to put our stack back on exactly how it came off, put our washers back on, and just stack it up so everybody's nice and happy in here. I might add a little more lube to this. Whoops, missed one. Don't forget the washers, Barry. And just to make sure that it's sliding around good inside of here. Now, this is a very hard piece of plastic here, so we'll act as a washer for this bumper here to be rammed into as we tighten it down. Okay, so easy enough to put everything back together. Find the right hole there. There we go. Got the shaft back in, spring back in. Then I'll just take it the same way that I took it out, push it back in, slide the rod back in there, get the spring to where it needs to be. Get a better look at it there. And then it's just a matter of getting the rod associated back inside of this, which again is not the easiest thing to do because this is a very tight piece here. This plastic piece that's going through the rod end. It's very snug in here, which is a good thing. You don't want to loose, obviously. But yeah, it's you got to kind of wrestle it a little bit to get it to where you want it to be. But once you do, then you can kind of straighten this out and start with your screws and remember where you had the height for this. All right. So then it's just a matter of tightening the screws up in the rod end here, and we're done. So easy enough to change this brake, the bumpers out if we had a way to do that, and they offered that as an accessory. Right, so I'll get all this normaled back up, and then we'll actually take a look inside at some of the electronics. So I want to take a look inside on the sensor that they're using here. You see it right there. Kind of looks like a potentiometer, but it's not. It's a contactless setup, kind of like a Hall effects using magnetic field from what I'm told. So we're going to actually pull this off and take a look at it. I'm going to do a close-up for you here down my close-up camera. We see we have two Phillips screws that seem to be holding this housing on. So first thing would be to try to pull those off. So let's do that very gently and carefully. Don't want to break anything. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, it's making a clicking noise. I don't know if you can hear that. Anytime something makes a clicking noise when I'm unscrewing it, I start to worry. So yeah, I'm not sure why it's clicking when it's rotating, but this one's not. So apparently it shouldn't be doing that. Or maybe it should, I don't know. But it seems to be coming out okay. I'm looking straight down in where these threads are. It looks like they're coming right off, so, or right out. So it will come off. So let's take a look at what we have here. Put a screwdriver down. And very carefully and gently handle this. All right, the first thing we can see up here is a magnet. Right? See that little magnet there? And it's probably connected to the shaft. Let's see. That's a pretty strong magnet. I mean, it's holding my wrench up pretty well there. Okay, so the magnetic surface is actually on the sides. It's not on the tip, because when I go to the tip, it pulls the wrench automatically off to the side of it. So the magnetic fields are being generated around the outside of the cylinder, not this way, but this way. All right, and that makes sense because it's rotating, so that magnetic field is going to be changing so that our sensor in here, which I'm going to show you now, careful. All right, So we have a circuit board in here, and this is the sensor that is able to pick up the magnetic field and let the computer know exactly what position our pedal is in as it moves, right? Nice little setup in here. Very clean circuit board. Yeah, I can't see any numbers or any branding on it straight away, but yeah, very nicely done. Now these are actually some plastic screws, so maybe that's why the clicking was going on. I like that it has the Molex plug set up in this. It's not soldered directly on. That way, if something goes wrong with this sensor or this board, they could just send you a whole new sensor. Just unplug it, plug the new one in, screw it back on, and you're good to go. Right, okay. So being contactless like this is going to obviously increase the life cycle potential of this pedal set straight away over a potentiometer, even though there's some very good potentiometers out there too. But yeah, this is really the preferred, and I think most manufacturers are going to this. But again, I'm a little surprised to see that this is punching above my expectations. I wasn't expecting to see something like this, as far as, you know, I was sure there was going to be a potentiometer in here anyway. So yeah, I'm glad to see that. So what we'll do next is put this back on, obviously, very carefully, make sure we don't break anything. And then we're going to pull the box off on the bottom of this and see what's going on as far as the load cell amplifier circuit and, of course, the USB conversion board, and see what they're using there. All right, so I pulled the bottom cover off so we could see what the electronics look like here. You'll see there's a couple of cables dangling here. This is the clutch, and this one down here is for the throttle. And I'll give you a close-up shot. The throttle came off of the right plug right here, and the clutch came off of the left plug right up there. All right, so if you ever pull yours off and you forget which one goes where, you can look at this video and see. Now, this is the load cell cable coming off of our load cell, that's snaking back in there. And this has some hot glue on it, so I didn't take that off. I really don't need to, just to show you guys what's going on here. And obviously, this is plugged in to the Molex that's soldered to this portion of the circuit board, which would be, of course, the load cell amplifier circuit. And over here would be the part where we're doing USB conversion. And the plug down here on the bottom is the USB plug that's coming out on the bottom here. And you can see the little grommet. See if I can get this up here, you guys can see it. There it is. You can see the little grommet here for cable management going through there. And we have another one that goes on the back here that I've already taken off. So the branding is actually, you guys can see this. Anyway, it says Feel VR right there. All right, so this is their own custom circuit board. And yeah, nicely done here. Everything looks very clean, professional. Again, this is punching above my expectations a bit here. This is a very clean job as far as what they've done here. And yeah, I can't see any way to complain about this, especially at the price point. So what I'm going to do is plug everything back up, of course, put this back on. Oh, and before I get this put all back together, I want to show you guys why it's easy to, let me get the light on it there, to adjust these pedals, each individual pedal this way, as far as longitudinally, or rather laterally, longitudinally this way, but laterally once we have it mounted. These plates under here have these nuts that are welded or soldered or somehow attached to these plates. And that allows us to not have to get in here with a wrench and hold that nut while we're unscrewing it on the other side, so that we can get them loose and move them sideways. It's a very cool little piece that they did there that makes it much easier. It's been much, much harder to have to pull this off every time we want to change our pedal. So yeah, good on VR for doing that. I like to see stuff like this. They were thinking ahead there. Right, so again, just going to put all this back together, and then it's just a matter of getting these puppies mounted, and we'll see how that works out. So here's a flyby showing you the pedals securely mounted to the P1X frame that I'm running. Actually, it's securely mounted to a JCL pedal tray system. And yeah, I wasn't sure how I was going to mount this at first, but I'm going to show you a shot here, a picture of how the brackets that I use to secure this with. There's 4 brackets on there, and they are spaced correctly for the holes that I was going to use on the threaded standoffs that's being used on this pedal set. And yeah, I'm going to show you a picture of that. There you can see the 4 standoffs sitting there, and those are M6 threads. So that's what I was going for as far as attachment points. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and see if, you probably won't be able to see too much, but you'll see the back ones pretty well there. So you can see the back ones where I have them attached to those standoffs. And then if we go further down, you can barely see the other two up front. I can get this thing to focus. It's dark in there, so it doesn't want to focus. All right, anyway, you guys get the idea. So it's very securely attached now. So the only flex I'm getting is from the actual pedal tray itself, or not the pedal tray, but the, yeah, I guess you could call it the pedal tray, the piece of metal that all three of the pedals are mounted to there, that you see there, right? So I'm getting a little flex there, but I was expecting that. I wasn't not surprised at all. That's certainly meeting expectations because of the thickness of the metal plate there and how wide it spans to hold those pedals. So anyway, it's probably not going to affect driving too much, but that's the next thing we're going to do. Go ahead and jump in and give this thing a spin, do a little heel and toe, and see how they react. I wanted to do a special segment on these Pedals 1 from FieldVR, and that's just showing you a couple of issues I ran across while I was using these pedal sets. And I'm not doing this as a slam against FieldVR or anything like that. It's just, I want to manage expectations properly on this pedal set if you actually get it. And yours may or may not do the same things. I think the flex is going to be the same, but it may or may not have a squeak like mine did. And first off, remember, this is a 2mm plate that they're using to mount these pedals to, which is, it looks like it's a stamped steel kind of plate, and there is some flex in it. Now, if you're just using it on the bench when I'm doing my reviews, and this happens not just to anything, but I noticed a difference in how things feel. Obviously, once you have something hard mounted to a good stiff rig, then some other qualities can reveal themselves, good or bad. And just sitting here pushing this pedal, it doesn't do any squeaking, all right, when I have it on the bench. But when I first went over there and hard mounted it over on the P1X that I'm using and bolted everything tightly down the way I like to do, and then started pushing on the pedal, I'm going to cut to a B-roll right now, and you guys can listen to what the sound was in the pedal. All right, so obviously that's a pretty loud squeak. And I had to do something about it because there's no way I can actually do my video. You can imagine me doing heel and toe with this pedal set, and having that noise in the background wouldn't work very well. And not only that, but no one wants that kind of noise coming out of the brake pedal. Now, I did some testing, and I was looking around for it. Now, this is a high-pitched kind of metallic squeak that is annoying, and not only that, but it's not the easiest thing to chase down, because when you're sitting here listening to it, it's a metallic squeak, and we've got a lot of moving parts here, right? We've got these washers that are inside the cylinder here with the bumpers, and they are very tight up against the cylinder, but I greased that down real good and didn't change the sound at all, so I knew it wasn't in there. It could have been somewhere in here, and yeah, or down in these hinges here, because they actually move a little bit. See that? So any place that moves, it could be the problem. But it turned out to be the pin that is actually acting as the hinge for the brake pedal itself. Now these pins, I'm not sure exactly how they've got this set up. It looks like there's let me see if I can show you guys that. Down in here, there's a tube, I think, with this pin inserted into it. And the tube is welded to the bottom of this pedal lever here, this whole assembly. So there's a pin going in there, and there's no way I'm going to be able to show you. It looks like a plastic bushing in between both sides here, on the outside here of this plate and the inside of this plate, and of course on the outside of this plate and the inside of the other plate. And it looked like it's plastic. I could be wrong. It's hard for me to tell. I'd have to completely disassemble this pedal and take it all apart to try to figure out what it was or what it was made of. But I did locate it, or finally get it located. Let me turn this around here, so that this pin was what it was doing the actual squeaking, right? That joint in there. So I'm showing you another B-roll here. I just got in here with some of this spray lube, and because it was already mounted to my rig, I just did it sideways and shot some in there on both sides. And yeah, once I did that and worked it a little bit, it went away. But it did come back. All right, so it didn't go away permanently. And this is just a shot of the lube I use. It's just some generic spray lube. So I think to permanently alleviate this problem, I would have to, again, take everything apart, take the pin out, and put some proper grease on it, if you will, to keep that from happening again. And again, I'm not trying to slam VR for this. It's just one of those quality control things. This is a new set of pedals. I'm sure they will get this sorted, especially after they see this video. Squeaks like that, they'll make sure that they get plenty of grease in there, or maybe even, I don't know, change the design a little bit and put some bronze bushings in here, or brass bushings or something like that, copper, so that, yeah, you don't have this metal to metal contact, which I think there is a bushing in here. It's again, hard for me to tell unless I take it apart, but whatever is in here is not doing the job, that's for sure, because you could hear that squeaking. And now let's talk a little bit about the pedal flex. And I'm going to go back to the squeaking shots that I gave you, and I'm going to show you the brake pedal being used here. And as I'm pressing on the brake pedal, you can see how much the front part of the brake pedal, just in front of the heel plate, you can see how that plate is actually bowing as I'm pushing on the brake pedal. Right. So it's bowing so much, and I went around and got to a back angle of the pedals, that you can actually see the throttle pedal and the clutch pedal face plates. If you watch them, they're actually spreading apart from each other as I press the brake pedal, because the brake pedal's pulling that metal up, which causes those other pedals to actually bend out a little bit. And it's not so excessive that, you know, it's flopping around or anything, but it does show that there's just too much flex in the plate. So this plate down here needs to be thicker. I'd like to see double, triple the thickness that they're mounting these pedals to. Now, I could alleviate all of this by just taking these pedals off, using those 4 mounting holes that we saw before on these pedals, and mounting to a profile. You're just making a square profile frame, if you will, that you've got. If you've watched my other videos on pedal sets, you know I do that with some profile. I make a little frame, and then you can use the T-nuts and bolt these pedals directly to it. But the only caveat to that is we have the board that, if you saw the look inside segment, we have our board in here, right? And it needs another case. In other words, you'd have to take the board off and put it in maybe a 3D printed case or something, so you can mount it separately somewhere on your rig, and then, yeah, that would be good there. But that would eliminate the flex that we saw, right? But it wouldn't eliminate the squeak problem in here. And I'm tempted to take this all the way apart and put some good synthetic grease in there in that joint, and then see if it comes back. I just don't have the time right now to do that, but I did want to show you guys how I fixed it. And if it kept doing like it did, and it did come back. In fact, I think I have another segment in here somewhere where I say that. I said, oops, looks like the squeak is back. So what I would do is, temporarily, if you don't want to take the brake pedal plates apart and get to the pin itself, then you could give it a better lube if you turned it this way, up on the side. And then if you get in there, the lube is going to be more of a chance of it going straight down around the pin, and then just flip it over on the other side and get the other side of the pin and let it drain down in there. Of course, you have to wipe up your mess, and that might last a bit longer, I think, because doing it sideways doesn't give the lube a good opportunity to get all the way into this tube inside of here and get the lube spread around inside. So anyway, that was just, again, something I wanted to show you guys. So again, I'm just trying to set expectations for something that I ran across and you may or may not. But the flex is something, as far as the squeak goes. Now, the flex is something you will run across if you hard mount these, because I don't see any other way to get away from that flex other than a thicker plate down here. So at least twice as thick as this might help alleviate a lot of that. But you can see, you saw rather, if you go back and look at it again, those flex segments when I was actually pushing that brake pedal, it certainly was lifting this plate up right in this area here on the front part of the brake pedal. And again, that caused these pedals to spread out because it was pulling the metal, stretching it, so they moved this way anyway. So there you go. That's what I wanted to show you guys. And again, I'm calling this the Flex and Squeaks, or Squeaks and Flex. I'm not sure what I'm going to title it yet, but yeah, there you go. And other than that, you know, like I said, I'm just trying to set expectations of what you may or may not run across once you have your pedals in hand. And I'm sure that the guys at VR could help, you know, could change that in a little bit of more quality control on the lube inside of there or something like that. Right. So we'll get on to our next segment. So here we are in the Feel VR calibration application. And this comes obviously with your pedals as a download from their site. And this is how we're going to calibrate the pedals instead of using something like DI view. And it's pretty simple affair here. We're going to start with the throttle over here. You can see right now I'm showing some blue. It's showing activated for some reason. And if I push the pedal, you can see it doesn't move very much. 14, was that 14%? And that's to the stop. So yeah, it's curious that it's already on like that. But once we hit the calibrate, we just come down here to calibrate. And we can actually put a dead zone in here too. So there's other things we can do here. But I usually just hit the calibrate and go ahead and press the pedal again. And again, it's moving up to 23, it looks like 2385 max. And remember, I have a short stop or throw on this. Not the shortest, but the second from the shortest. So I'll let go of the pedal now and then simply click on done. And now when I press the throttle, it should fill the whole screen up. So let's see what happens. And there it is. All right, couldn't be any easier than that. And we'll go ahead and hit calibrate on the brake pedal. And again, I'll push down on that to where I think I want it. And there's a little squeak there. The squeak is back. All right, so I'll have to lube that again. Again, hit done on the pedal. And now it should go all the way. There it is. Need a little lube. If you guys saw the segment on the pedal flex and squeaks, then you know what's going on here. All right, so last but not least, we'll go ahead and calibrate the clutch. Again, hit calibrate, press it down to where you feel you want the clutch to be. You can feel that press, that little bit of tension at the end of the stroke here that would indicate we're lifting the pressure plate. But again, it's not very heavy, but you can feel it. So let go, hit done. There we go. All right, so now we're at 100% on the clutch, and we're 100% on the brake, and then the throttle is 100%. So we're good to go. Then you can just hit save. Calibration data successfully updated. And now you can actually reset the default anytime you want to and recalibrate. And that's simply doing this, and then you can see we're right back where we were, and then we just go through the calibration process again. So there we have it. Pretty simple application to use. Nice to have that we don't have to do this in DI view. We can put dead zone on the top or the bottom depending on the game we're in. It might require that if you cannot set it accurately enough in the game settings. The Feel VR calibration app, and yeah, we'll just start doing some driving now. Here we are in the notorious Turn 17 at Sebring, and we are in iRacing in the Lotus 79, a fitting car, I think, to use some heel and toe shifting technique, which is a great way to test a set of pedals as far as stiffness, flex, accuracy, and things like that. Now, the first thing I noticed about these pedals, because I use other sets of pedals that are far more stiff than these are, is they do have some flex in the action, especially when I'm driving them hard like this under heel and toe conditions. And it's not just the flex from the brake pedal pulling up on the plate that it's mounted to. It seems to be a little bit of torsional flex on the pedal faces, because when you're doing heel and toe, you're not exactly accurate, as you can see where I'm placing my foot on the actual faces of these pedals as we're doing a bunch of downshifting there. And sometimes you get straight on, sometimes you don't, and it feels like they just twist a little bit underfoot. And again, this is not surprising to me because, as I pointed out before, there's only one spreader at the very top of that pedal lever, and then the next one comes in at where the rod end is attached through the eye of the rod end, down there at the bottom towards, and there's a lot of space there. I'd like to see one or two extra spacers in there to try to stiffen that up. Now, of course, the brake pedal itself does have some flex in it as I am pushing it down, because the 2mm plate that it's mounted to just picks up and flexes. It bows, if you will. And again, all these bolts are nice and tight, so there's nothing loose here, in case you guys might be thinking that. Right. Other than that, you kind of get used to it. And in other words, what I mean is you get used to the flex as part of the pedal's overall feel when you're using the whole set. And your muscle memory comes into play, and you just get used to it, and you just get on with the job of driving. As you can see here, it's really not affecting my accuracy of shifts and, you know, how I'm usually doing my heel and toe. No problem with that. So again, it's just something you get used to. Now, the throttle, as you can see here, is kind of a long throw compared to my brake pedal and even the clutch. And I would probably, if I was going to keep these on my rig, I would definitely move that stop up to the last front position to limit that. And of course, that's subjective. Some people like it longer, some people don't. And yeah, the brake pedal, as far as the load cell is concerned, is doing an accurate job. I didn't have any glitches there. It seemed to work fine. I have the bumpers compressed as much as I can, just about, as far as the tensioning or preload on that. And it seems to be okay, even though it's a 50 kilogram limit on this load cell. The clutch, again, when you'll have it on the bench, it feels like you're pushing through a pressure plate at the very end of the clutch throw. But once you're driving an angle like this, yeah, it kind of goes away, and you're just popping the pedal, really. So anyway, overall, the set did come together to where I was able to drive with it and not have any performance issues as far as it affects my driving. So we'll just get on to the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the Pedals 1 from the guys at Feel VR. First impressions of this pedal set out of the box is positive. Having an all-metal construction give them a heft that you would not expect from a set of pedals at this price point. It's 6.3 kilos, a substantial feeling kit here. The aesthetics on the set do seem to come together for an overall pleasing look, I think. Throughout this review, I tried to properly manage the expectation of a pedal set that comes in at the price point that the early supporters got them at. I found that expectations were exceeded in some areas and not met in others. The high points being a brake pedal with a load cell and decent bumper stack. The contactless position sensors on the clutch and throttle pedals. The custom circuit board sporting the load cell amplifier and USB conversion electronics. A very good range of adjustability is available in all of the pedals. The pedal faces, although not what I would call stainless, do have nice shapes to them that lend themselves to smooth pedal operation. Then we have areas in this set that really need improvement, I think. There are sharp edges on some of the parts used in the set's construction, with the most notable being the pedal faces. The back edge of these pieces were sharp enough to cause some concern, so one needs to be mindful of this when working on the pedals. The overall finish on this set could easily be improved by filing down the sharp edges. The metal plate that all the parts are mounted to is just too thin. It causes some unnecessary flex when the pedals are being used, so much so that pushing on the brake pedal actually induces movement in both the clutch and throttle pedals. I did sense some torsional flex in the pedal arms under hard use. I believe this is due to the unsupported span on the pedal levers between the top spreader and the rod end mounting point. The brake pedal pivot point quickly developed a very annoying metallic squeak. I was able to temporarily fix this with some spray lube. Not enough to keep the squeak from returning though. Again, I think this is something that the guys at Feel VR should be able to fix with a few tweaks to the joints assembly. Overall, I think these pedals still need some refinement to make them what I think they are capable of being. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.